So first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. I love traveling and I love participating in different conferences around the world. So it's really a great pleasure to be here. Of course, also a privilege. I grew up in Bulgaria, and even though this was past the communist regime, we didn't really have economics in high school. So when I arrived at Harvard for college, I was just really keen to try out different things. And I was very curious. So actually my first year of college, I was doing the tracks leading for genetics and pre-med as well as economics, and I just fell in love with it. And what I quickly realized is that what I really enjoyed was the ability to take a toolkit and think logically about a lot of questions that are of first order importance in the world. And I've always struggled to choose because, you know, variety is the spice of life, but also I like drawing connections across different subfields in economics. At the time, I didn't think of it as subfields of economics. I thought of it as how interconnected different ideas are and how they have applications across what I now know are field boundaries. And so in college, this is what I think really inspired me, taking a lot of classes in different fields. You name it, trade development, finance, public, labor, I did everything and anything. And so it became very clear to me that I was passionate about it and I wanted to carry on with a PhD. And in graduate school, of course, my curiosity / indecisiveness continued. So as I was telling you a little bit earlier, I ended up doing the 3 sequences for trade development and finance. And ultimately, I found that international economics was most appealing to me, and so I've anchored my research in that field, but I continue to draw on ideas from development and finance and also apply what we learn from trade to other fields. So for me, that is sort of the most exciting and powerful aspect about economics, that it is a toolkit that allows you to think about the world even when the world is changing really quickly. I think globalization has been one of the critical phenomenon of the late 20th century. And to me, it seemed like it's transformative and it changes the way individual economies operate, but also how interconnected they are. And so for me, that was almost like a unifying territory for thinking about different questions. So I think if I were born 50 years ago, I probably would not have chosen trade. I think at the time it was much more narrow focused, thinking about exports and imports at the aggregate level of final goods. Today, trade is more of a platform for thinking about all kinds of questions. My own work is about how firms participate in the global economy, the fragmentation of production to global value chains, the operations of multinational companies. But in the context of that, I think about all kinds of issues that many applied economists would think about. So it's given me the kind of context in which to think about firm heterogeneity in productivity, quality, capacity, and management practices. I've done a lot of work on the role of financial sector development and financial frictions for international trade and multinational activity. And now I've moved to thinking about various aspects about global value chains to change the opportunities and challenges that firms face. So for example, today I'll be talking about the role of globalization for innovation and growth, but specifically through the lens of this latest phenomenon in trade, which is global value chains. So I guess to me, that's one of the reasons why international economics was so appealing, because it was sort of so wide-ranging in what it can apply to. I think it is a concern. So trade as a field is much more, let's say, cross-sectional or static in its focus. There are segments of the literature that think about trade and macro, and there they might think more about trade dynamics. But as a field, we're more about explaining patterns in the cross-section, if you will. However, I do think that the dynamics are much more important when we think about the current research frontier and the implications for growth and policy design. So when you take a dynamic view, what opportunities the trade offer to firms today, and in turn, what that will imply for firm growth into the future. In that context, I think you're absolutely right, that to the extent that financial frictions prevent firms from fully benefiting from participating in international trade, they're not just going to be constrained short term, they're also going to be unable to benefit from growth and innovation opportunities. And that's going to have a long run effect. So in that sense, it is a bit of a vicious circle. On the flip side, though, I'm the perennial optimist. Call me naive. I'd like to think that I'm optimist. On the flip side, I do think that one underappreciated benefit of global value chains is that it allows countries, firms, and countries to complete segments of the global production process, get a foothold, and then in time essentially grow and expand into progressively more profitable segments of the value chain, but also segments of the value chain that support more growth opportunities. And so to me, it is a little bit narrow-sighted to think of certain countries being sort of, to say, stuck in low value added or low growth segments of the value chain, when I think actually there are great opportunities out there. And so the reason why I started by saying, that is an optimistic tone is because if there are current barriers to a country developing, the rise of GVCs might actually help it overcome those challenges.